My name is Tati Ferruccio. I am a graduate student here at RIT,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm doing the industrial design program since 2018. I had like a brief stop for doing internships, but I'm back to the school, and now I'm actually working with the Vanellis Center, helping a little bit with the archives and some other specific things that we are running, other initiatives that we are running here.
Right.
And this semester, I'm doing this study looking through this project that Lala started called the Today's Girls. And and we've been through the research, the documentation that we have. We actually have some prototypes, the dolls, and
Yeah,
it's
because I think those went in the archive eventually because it didn't go into production.
yeah, so we have some of them here. We know that there are some that we don't know yet what happened to them. But anyway, like I just wanted to explain to you what I've been doing. It's basically going through the research and learning about the project, and and we try to connect. So I wanted to know more about the project, but also about you and how it was to work with the Vanelli. So I would ask you to introduce yourself if you can, and talk a little bit about what you do, and from now on, like how it was to work with the Vanellis as well.
Right. Okay. So my name is Flavia Destefanis, and I'm originally Italian. Studied here in the early '80s, and ended up staying in New York all along. And I worked for Massimo. I met Massimo Andella when I was working in. I was the head of public affairs at Rizzoli, the publishing house, and they did a bunch of projects with us at the time. Massimo was designing designed several of the architecture books we published. So that's when I met them. And when I left, there was like a whole reshuffling in the corporation at Rizzoli, and Massimo Nadella asked me to join them. And one of the things was because I'm like totally bilingual, it helped them with a bunch of projects that they were doing in Italy. And with them, I really worked on, sort of uh, client development and um, the exhibition program, which they were just wrapping up that big exhibition that had toured. And you've got many parts of it, I think, even like the display cases and all of that, it was just a matter of like packing it away and putting it in storage and bringing back some of those materials into the archive. And then the archive was a bit of a mess. So when I had time I worked for them for 3 years, like full time. And then after I left, they kept calling me back as sort of like when they had a specific project to work with them on that. And then most of what I did was, sort of getting their work published, getting, working with clients and writing up the contracts and proposals for new projects. But the office was very interactive. Whenever there was a project, especially something like the dolls, everybody got, we wanted to play dolls. So there are, several women, and everybody was kind of, piped in and gave their opinion of what it was. And I don't know if you really ever, I don't know what papers you have, whether there was some kind of a sort of an intention, like an intent, like something that was written down about the intention of what the project was. But the whole thing was sort of to counter the culture of Barbie dolls, like girls still wanted to play with dolls, but then to empower them. And the whole project was actually called Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman. So
Okay.
I don't remember if the packaging actually had that as a subtitle, but that was the whole concept, was that the doll was the same height and size and sort of of a Barbie doll, but the whole idea was to first of all, we actually looked with Lela, we were talking like, what's the ideal of a woman. It's like, it's not somebody with, size double D breasts and hips that can't be childbearing, et cetera, et cetera. And so we thought of Kate Moss. So we actually gathered up a whole bunch of photos of Kate Moss, who was, a little, not quite like a voluptuous woman, but still feminine. Not big breasts. The feet on the doll were flat, so she could actually stand on her own, and she had proportions that were that of a 12-year-old girl, a 10-year-old girl, something like a tween. So something for girls to look up to as a normal body type and proportions and so on. And so that was the concept behind it. And then to say, okay, today's girl, so she had a set, like each doll came with a set of was to come with a set of normal clothes, jeans, sneakers, shorts, whatever it was. I don't there was like a whole slew of those. It was actually an Italian woman, Louise Camilli, who had come in and was somehow connected to somebody who used to do furniture for them in Tuscany, who had actually produced some of the furniture that they had designed. And so she was in New York for a while, and she was very, she had done a lot of designing and cutting clothes and so on. So she was involved in the project as well and developed a whole bunch of clothes for the girl. And then the whole idea was that then tomorrow's woman, the other side of the packaging, and I seem to remember the regular clothes were laid flat and the professional clothes were actually on the doll. So it could be tomorrow's president, tomorrow's chef, tomorrow's doctor, tomorrow's astronaut. I remember, and so we'd come up with, in the prototype phase, I mean, we were getting all sorts of funny little things to make. I remember I made the chef's knife out of balsa wood or something like that.
That's awesome.
For the presentation of, and we all, it's like whoever was handy would get involved and put in their 2 cents worth, and it was sort of fun and collaborative.
Yeah, I love you were talking about the name of the project being Today's Girls and Tomorrow's Women, because we saw some documents from Coliforms that was showing the full name, but as you said, on the packaging it's not the full name, so we were not sure if it was just for marketing purposes that Coliform was having like a full name, kind of like a propaganda, and then the name of the project was Today's Girls, but it's actually the opposite, which is super
interesting. It's Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman. So,
okay.
So, and you could, the different models and that had different skin tones and different hair types and so on, was supposed to be, this is who you are now, but the same person dressed differently and so on can become the president, and it had, I mean, some of the connotations were a little bit, sort of standardized, red suit, little red, white and blue flags and so on. But, and I don't remember specifically the packaging, but I think it was at one point with the idea, it was in a tube.
Yes,
and
it's
split in half. What the idea was to say today's girl, tomorrow's woman, so that it would.
Oh, I see.
I don't know how far they got in the development of that, because I think at some point they pulled the plug, or it just kind of got dormant. I don't know. The guy at Colorforms was a bit older, I think. They'd worked with him with Colorforms years before, and they had this connection to the guy who had invented the Colorforms.
I see. Yeah.
So, and I don't know what happened to it, because I left in 91, 92 or so. And so, no, when did I leave? No, I left after, sorry. I left in about 95. I was there from like beginning of 93 for about 3 years. I don't remember what year it was, the
Yeah, the documents that we have, they dated more or less on the timeline you were talking about. Like it's 93, 94. We have some stuff that it's later on 95 and 96.
Yeah.
And it's more related to when Lela was trying to have a conversation with, oh my God, the name of the company just fall away. It's
Like a different like Hasbro or so, like a different toy manufacturer.
Yes, she was talking with a doll manufacturer to see if they could launch the project, and he ended up that the conversation just didn't work well. And you were mentioning about the packaging. Yes, that's the packaging that we have here. It's the tube, transparent tube package where you have the doll on the front, and then on the back side you have kind of like a small book that's I think is supposed to be where you see
Exactly.
information about the dolls, right?
Right. And what the career choices are and so on. That's where you have the regular girl outfit that would be sort of more appropriate for the age, but then this is what you'd like to be. And it was the whole idea was it's a sort of thing that you can also you can give it as a graduation present. You can that idea was it's like in terms of marketing there was a whole idea of saying encouraging girls to dream big, that you don't have to be tomorrow's mommy and that's it, which is what a lot of dolls kind of project girls to be. It's like,
Yeah, Flavia, I have tons of questions actually, but I wanted to start first. If you can help us to understand the timeline and who were the people you guys were talking to, because we have documents dating from very big jumps. Like we have a document from 1 year, and then like 3 months later we have another document. And I think there is some conversations that we were missing because we just don't have the full
right.
story.
I mean, it was 30 years ago,
I
so
know, yeah, as
and
much
I
as
was
I can
involved
remember.
at certain levels. I'd come in and sculpt a little knife about this big for one of the prototypes, or we'd like chat about it over lunch. So I wasn't involved in that was really Layla, and it was, I think
I
it
see.
came out of some conversations that she had with the guy from Colorformers whose name I don't remember. And he said, yes, let's go ahead, let's do some prototyping. And actually, I think Colorforms actually created a bunch. I remember like we'd get like skin samples, and then they'd make like a prototype, and Leila would mark up even with a Sharpie or something like that, like the hip is too rounded or the hip is too straight, whatever. We went through a few of those, and then they sent a bunch of the somewhat approved prototype doll in different skin tones and hair, and we got working on those, creating the the clothes and the packaging and the concept and the books, and I think also the graphics of the little books and what the stories might be, with the idea that these were prototypes which would then go into maybe some peer reviews, or just go through a marketing process. And I left probably around that time, because I joined Vignelli in sort of 90. I was there 93, 94, 95.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it had already sort of like petered out when I was still there, and I think Colorforms sort of lost interest, or they said it's really not our field and so on. And then I think Leila, at some point, I think I remember her telling me that they were going to try and revive it, and see, since we'd put a lot of work and there was a little bit of money that came in from Colorforms, I think, to develop it. But she said it's kind of a pity that it's not going into production, and she really believed in that.
Yeah, and it's everything you're telling me is so interesting because we were like seeing the documents and trying to understand like who was responsible for helping with manufacturing and having the prototypes ready. So I have a question for you regarding the dolls itself, because we on the documentation that we have several pictures of dolls that we don't have here. There was one specific doll that we have pictures that we don't have here, that it's the Hillary Clinton doll, which is super cute.
It's not the Hillary Clinton, it was today's girl. Actually, that's what it was. Today's girl, tomorrow's president. Today's girl, you know, one of the, like, the whole concept was today's girl, tomorrow's woman. But it was, and then it got refined per doll. It was today's girl, tomorrow's astronaut.
I see.
Which you probably have. I remember making the you know, trying to find a transparent ball to make the what do you call it? The thing over
The
your
helmet.
head.
Yeah, we actually have this one here. It's just adorable. The
Yeah.
whole doll is so cute.
And then there was today's girl, tomorrow's president. It wasn't Hillary Clinton, but it was the typical. I remember the red suit, and it was done with the same material. You know, they used to, you know, that they used to have a seamstress and like a fashion. They had a fashion line,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a line of clothing, and in the studio there was a big workshop that where the seamstress was, and they had the fabrics and so on, and so a lot of that stuff was sewn in the studio.
I see.
I mean, all of it was made in the studio, all the different parts of it. And so what you call the Hillary Clinton doll was exactly the today's girl, tomorrow's president.
Yeah, because we definitely seen through the documents and the images that we have from the dolls that some of them are a little bit different than the other ones in terms of shape and proportion. So I don't know if at some point Lela partnered with someone else, you know, to get other dolls made or things like that. I can show you later on like what documents that we have, so I can
Yeah,
show you.
I can look through them and see if I can make any heads or tails. You know, it's like it is almost 30 years ago, so
Yeah,
it's not, you know, I'll remember some of it, and some of it I may never have seen.
yeah, because they
But I
dated
remember
somewhat.
the whole discussion of like sending photos of, I remember doing a lot of clippings of Kate Moss. So we went through all these magazines and kind of got the kind of like the body type and the proportions and so on, which were sort of an anti-Barbie kind of thing, and it's really setting itself up to. And there were a bunch of prototypes that were made, I think, by Color Forms. Or
Okay.
Color Forms, you know, I don't think they made dolls regularly, but they had a whole network of, you know, I don't know how, you know, toys are developed in their own
Yeah.
way. And so they're probably manufacturers who do the plastic and so on. And so we had a bunch of like, the heads came separate, you know, the hair and so on. Those I remember coming separately. The bodies came in and so on. And so I don't know if then when she went, if Leila picked up the project again and tried to work with other manufacturers, if they came up with prototypes that they could produce that were more like production prototypes as opposed to design prototypes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like it's so good to hear what you're saying, because it kind of matches to what we've been investigating for a while by now. So I have a question for you, Flavia, regarding the environment of the studio and how it was. I know you were not necessarily involved on the development as a designer, but I am curious to know if you heard from Lala or from the people that was working on the office. What was the sort of the inspiration that came to do the project? I know you were saying that like it was trying to do a doll that was against what Barbie was marketing to young girls. But I wonder if there was something else that sparked the idea to Lala to be engaged on saying like, okay, I want to design something that is different what Barbie's doing, you know?
I don't think it was like, I have an idea for a doll, let's see who can do it. I think it was one of those many fortuitous kind of projects where they got together with this guy. I can like physically picture him, don't remember the name of his name. It's like a skinny older gentleman with, you know, little creative type kind of person who was the creator of Color Forms, and they'd kept up. They were friends and so on. And I think at one point, they had a conversation that I wasn't, but probably over dinner or something like that.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, we're branching out, we're thinking, and then probably that's like, oh, Lela would say, oh, I hate, she was quite a feminist, so she's like, I hate Barbie dolls. And I think at around that time there was they had done a physiological study that if a woman that had the proportions of Barbie could never have children because her hips are too narrow, so she was not a childbearing human being. Whatever, those kinds of conversations then came up while we were working on the thing, and I imagine they had come up when the first idea was sparked, and then then I think they got, like they started getting some sketches together, and Leila had different people sort of pick up. I remember doing, because I also did all the press, I had all the magazines were kind of like came to me first. So she said, can you look through stuff and find me body type, like tear out some sheets out of the magazines and find things of women who are beautiful but very young looking and have maybe somewhat androgynous kind of bodies, like a 12, 30, like like a girl would have before she comes, it's like in that thing. And I remember we sort of keyed in on Kate Moss as being something that would make sense in terms of as a model.
That's awesome.
It was identifiable, and it was easier to find photos of her, pre-website, web, where, now you just go in and you say androgynous child body, millions of pictures come up. It was more paper based.
That's so cool. And you mentioned to me before that this project was very collaborative. Like you as a team, and Lala was asking the opinion of other women on the office too. I would love to hear more about that. Like if you can elaborate more about like how would you, I mean, you said you were cutting like paper and things, but what else, like other people was also helping? Like would they give opinions about it? Like how was that interaction?
The studio was not very structured. It's not like you had different studios within the studio, and this studio did this. And hello.
This is Josh.
Hello there.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm just in between a lot of things, and I wanted to come in and meet you and say hello.
Problem. Hi. Glad
Thank
to meet you.
Thank you so much for making time to work with our famous Tatiana, who's doing a wonderful research project. I'm sure she's told you all about it.
Yeah. It's great. I'm happy if I can, if there are little gaps that I can help fill, I'm happy to do so. Well, but again, I was saying it's almost 30 years ago, so it's like,
as guardians of historical content, we know all too well how quickly things become archaeology.
Right. No, and I worked a lot on the archive while I was there. It wasn't my main function, but it was, if an exhibition came up, if somebody wanted to borrow something, it was then up to me to go into the archive, and a lot of stuff. Some of it was organized, a lot of stuff was a mess. And I worked with Massimo and Leila even after I had left Vignelli around 95. They would call me back. We're also a little bit like a family because I'm Italian. My parents' backgrounds were somewhat similar to theirs. They were the same age and so on. So they kind of adopted me into the fold the way they did with a lot of people in the office.
Oh, wonderful.
If I went back and even the archives and the files, it's like they say, we don't know where to look for this thing. And I knew where to put my hands. The archives at that point were upstate already. I mean, I think you probably know Luca had moved everything to a farm or something. They bought a farm and put everything there. So everything, when the office closed at 10th Avenue, I wasn't there anymore, so I don't know, but I remember it, and there were lists of things that I had created so that they would know where things were.
Have you visited us at RIT yet?
I have not. I was supposed to come up for the opening.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember something. Like I was raising a child by myself, so I didn't have a lot of freedom to move around. But I'm also very good friend with is no longer around, but Roberto Guerra and Kathy Brew, who did the film.
Yeah,
So,
I just met with Kathy recently because we're talking about some collaboration over the Design is One.
with Kathy.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I remember that they were up there filming and made that part of the film. So I was supposed to come up with them, and then I don't remember what, but I couldn't.
Well, when we make it through this this crazy period, we would love to host you on campus. Perhaps you could come up and
Yeah, it would
talk
be
about
great.
your experience in person, and you'll be delighted to know that our archive is now starting to become sorted, and so I'm sure much of your work is in there, one way or the other.
Well, I mean, it wasn't done in any formal way. You need it as a sort of a study tool. We needed to be able to, if I needed a Heller dish, I needed to know it was on such and such a
Sure.
shelf. Most of it was, most of it was in Massimo and Lella's head.
Right.
And, trying to extract some of that and put it in words or put it in a form that would be usable by somebody else,
Well, our archivist, Jennifer, would be just over the moon to speak with
Yes.
you, I think.
Yeah.
Sure.
It would be
because
fun to see it again. I know I've seen photos. I've been on your website many times. I've sent people there and so on, but it'd be great to
You
visit.
would be delighted to see how we now utilize Lella and Massimo's archive as teaching tools. And in fact, their legacy continues as students are inspired by these works every day in their own research, as Tatiana is starting
Yeah.
here as well.
Very
So
cool.
we flow a lot of students through the center, and
Yeah.
this enables us to continue their dream, which is
Yeah.
to continue to build upon the knowledge base that they develop. So it's this very dynamic and exciting place.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to be here. I don't know if you knew Roger Remington at all.
A little bit. I knew of him. I didn't know him personally. I
Okay.
don't think.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Anyway, I've been fortunate to work with him for the last decade. And I knew the Vanellis a bit. I got to spend some time and work with both of them. More
Right.
Massimo than Lella because
Well, Lela was already sort of
yeah.
declining.
Massimo
I did.
Fantastic to work with because as the center was being set up, he was trying to get those of us who were participating in the center's activities to use the archives as teaching tools. So he was very hands-on in helping us to do that, which was really exciting. So anyway.
I remember even when I was there in the 90s, Lela was already trying to get funds to do. I mean, she knew that they were already working on that legacy, and Lela, being the business person, said it's not going to happen just because you give somebody an archive. You need to give them like some funding. And she was working with what's her name, the English woman.
In fact, the room that we're in is called
It's called her
the
name.
Helen Hamlin Trust Study.
Helen Hamlin, right? So Helen Hamlin was, they were friends, right? I see it. So they were friends, and but there was this whole like sort of working through and how they could, how she could help, and fundraising with different people. This would actually come to fruition. But I mean, and this was the 90s, so it was long before.
Well, part of I would say in some regards, their greatest design was the building of the center. And I don't mean the physicality, I mean the architecting of the idea for the center as a platform to continue their legacy and to continue the learning that they started. And it really is remarkable to understand that they were planning it for so long in that way. And to know just how complex a task like that is. They were great planners, for sure.
Lela was the great planner, but Massimo was more of the dreamer, but Lela made it happen. It's like, if, it was really an amazing collaboration, because I don't think it would have happened if Lela hadn't been, as tough as nails and just very determined to get things done, and
Yeah.
practical, just very, very practical.
For sure. Listen, I'm so sorry, but I have to go. I'm
Go
in
ahead.
between many things. I am so
Cool.
happy to meet you, and let's please
Very good
stay
to
in
meet you.
touch. And
I will.
when the climate clears, and you want a nice,
When we're allowed to, when we're all vaccinated.
and, it's
Well,
quite beautiful here in the Finger Lakes region. So, if you
yeah.
come in the summertime, you could enjoy a very pleasant weekend trip. And
Are you there all year long? Also, when the academic year is over, like
yeah,
you
I'm
have summer
here
class?
12 months. So,
Okay,
so let me know, and I would be delighted to host you and show you around.
would be fun to do that.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
I have an espresso machine here.
Better be good stuff, because Massimo would be unhappy if it wasn't good.
Just right.
Yes,
The
it is.
crema is perfect.
Okay. Ciao.
Okay, ciao.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, Flavia. I don't want to. I mean, I want to be mindful about your time. So I have just a couple of questions, and we can stop here. But I do want to know, like you were mentioning, like how Lela was the one that made like the dream come true, and like being the planner of getting things running and being
Done. I mean, really done and
yeah.
finished, and things invoiced and money into the business and so on. She was really that part of the, and she was an amazing. I mean, Massimo would kind of go off on, not on tangents, because he was very focused. Like when he designed something, it wasn't like 10 different options. It was, he thought about things and this was the solution. But Lela was an amazing designer herself, but a critic when Massimo would do things that just didn't make practical sense necessarily. So her input kind of really sort of, it made him, I don't know, kind of key into the things that could actually be done, rather than stuff staying on sketches and just ideas.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, oh man, like there's so much to digest from this conversation. Like I'm so happy that we had this time to talk, and like
and also you were asking me about the mood and how
yes.
who was brought into project. It was very I mean, in terms of anything with graphics and so on, and when I was there, it was really the whole idea of doing everything. We didn't paste up anything anymore by the time I got there, but the computers were still, sort of in the earlier stages of being able to do all the layouts, and we got some really big, good printers and scanners and all of that sort of stuff. But Massimo always drew on, you've seen thousands of all his like page by page layout and so on. And depending on the project and who was free among the younger designers and so on, there were some sort of mid-level designers that would like take a program and then go into all the different parts of it and work with Massimo on that. And then there were people who were actually doing layouts and taking Massimo's sketches and photographs and text and so on, and actually doing layout of like full books when they were doing, or packaging, all of that, actually making the mechanical drawings that then, or the PDFs or whatever, that would then create the printing files. So the graphic part of it was a little bit more like that. In terms of on a project like Today's Girl, it was very informal. It was the sort of thing where we'd all sit around and most of us had lunch at the same time. And we sat around these tables, beautiful view and so on. And we talked about all sorts of stuff, from politics to dolls to everything else. And so, whoever was more interested and excited about it would come around and maybe even at the end of the day work on it. There was this, as I told you, this Italian woman who was there at the time, Louise Camilli, who'd been, a seamstress. She'd done all sorts of things. Her family had been in furniture design and production for a long time. So that connection, because she was Italian and I was Italian, I was maybe drawn into it a little bit more as well.
I see.
It wasn't formal, like, okay, Flavia, you work on this part of the project, I work on, it wasn't like that, It was a sort of almost like a focus, like an informal focus group. And people would say, oh, I'd never buy something. But, they had a very clear idea of what even the whole packaging, the fact that it was a tube that would like turn around. It had I remember it had a little cord handle and so on. All of that kind of happened very organically, with, and probably, involving people who did more of the graphics, because you needed to be able to print it and paste it up and do it like that. I don't know who has the president. I have no idea.
Yes, we have, I can tell you the ones that I remember from the top of my head, but we have the astronaut, the racer, the singer or cowboy girl, sort of a country singer. We
There was
have
the chef, I remember, because you have the chef. The knife, we were always joking, you're probably too young, Lorena Bobbitt. Have you ever heard of Lorena?
No.
Lorena Bobbitt was a few years earlier than that, and she was she cut off her husband's penis, basically, because he was abusing her or something. So it was a whole thing. It was sewn back on, and the case went on forever and ever. And so we had this woman with a knife, and we'd like joke about her being today's girl, tomorrow's Lorena Bobbitt.
Oh my God.
That kind of environment, and and then we I was like writing up a contract the same day. It wasn't like I worked on that. It was like I would come in and collaborate a little bit, but it wasn't really my primary. I think the only person whose primary role it was actually Louisa and Leila were the 2 point people, but then everybody else got to and probably, I don't know if he was, something, law. He was the product design person, David Law.
Okay.
He had been a collaborator with them forever. He'd done all the, all the dishware, the prototypes and all of that. He might have been, because he had more experience with materials, he would probably have been more involved in, how can this happen, extrusions and the molds and things like that were really more his thing, but it wasn't produced in-house. We did, a lot of other prototypes. There was a shop in the back of the office, in the back of the studio. There was a shop, with saws and mold making, all sorts of things, but none of that was made in-house, except for little tools and little things that went onto the prototypes.
I see, like the small, because we saw on the packaging together with the doll some little items that would come together with the doll. So like you mentioned that these things might be prototyped at the studio, right? On the shop.
Yeah, all the little accessories and the clothes and everything was prototyped there. Like again, for the mask or the helmet on the thing, I remember we were looking and we found like a plastic ball, and then it got painted over or cut or whatever so that it could fit in, but all of these pieces had to be able to come off.
Yeah.
And I remember there was, or you'd find little accessories from some other doll that were somewhat in scale, and so I remember we did buy a few. In Barbie came as a nurse, well, today's girl came as a doctor,
Yeah, there was a
but she
doctor.
still
Yeah.
had this stethoscope and so we could probably borrow something like that to create the prototype of the doctor doll. Have you asked Luca and Valentina if they have any of those? Because they had kids who were sort of the right age at that time to be playing. No, I think Luca's daughter wasn't born yet, but Valentina already had a boy and a girl. So who knows if at some point, if the thing didn't happen, if the prototype ended up, or it might have been sent to this other toy manufacturer when they were trying to shift the project over to somebody other than Color Forms. I don't know.
We do. As you were mentioning before, when you were talking with Josh, we found Josh and Jennifer got the dolls that we have here on the farm in upstate. So I don't think they are aware of the project yet, like what I'm trying to research. It's something that we definitely want to do. Like we want to involve them on asking about like the project, and especially Valentina, to know like if she would be interested on talking a little bit about her mom and like all this ethos and like this idea of being very feminist and thinking through dolls that could represent like real women, you know. So we definitely want to bring her to the conversation, but we didn't start this conversation.
I have no idea at that point how involved she was, because she was just married, little babies.
Yeah.
I don't know how much she knew about it, but you'll ask her. I don't know what her memory of stuff like that would be. I mean, the other person I can reach out and see if she remembers anything more. Louise, this woman who lives in Italy. We're not in touch regularly, but she's a contact that I can. Her English, I think, at this point is probably not. It wasn't very good then. I don't know. She was only here for a year, but she may have some recollection if I can give me an excuse to say hello, and she might have some some recall.
That would be wonderful.
Right.
Yeah. Flavia, I just want to finish like with one last question. It's more about I don't know, like I want to know like how it was to work with Lella, like how was the environment, like her personality. I've been reading so much about her on the documents, and she already inspires me just by reading the things, and I didn't unfortunately didn't meet her in person. So I just wanted to know like how was the experience of working with the Vanellis and especially Lella in terms of projects and I don't know, like just speaking a little bit about her mind and like what was something that would inspire you regarding like Lella's work and her legacy.
I had more of, again, we did more of the administrative business development and so on, plus, and the external relations and PR and publicity kind of stuff. That's where we cross paths more. But I mean, I was part of, when they left, they might be gone 2-3 weeks. I was Lela's sort of substitute. If we needed to meet with a client, I'd be there with the designers. I didn't work on the design themselves, but it was great. It was very energizing. At the same time, Lela was really tough, and she'd like plow over you if she wanted to, or if she was in that kind of a mood, Mm-hmm. So, it had its positives and negatives. She had a very, very strong personality. She didn't treat you with silken gloves. I mean, she was tough. I mean, she depended on on the person's personality. With some people, she just didn't. You needed to either be able to push back or to take that kind of thing and not take it personally at times. So,
yeah.
I don't know if you've ever spoken to Sharon Singer.
No, I didn't.
Okay, because Sharon Singer was a designer my age, so we're, mid to late 50s. So we were in our early 30s at the time, and she worked with Leila for many more years than I did, and she was an interior designer. So they worked on projects more directly. You know, my involvement was with, on a product itself, with some of the production of the jewelry that was happening in Italy, like San Lorenzo and stuff like that. Again, it was her rapport with these people, and she'd be there and she'd draw sketches and look at prototypes there. But in terms of the production and the licensing and so on, some of that came through my hands. But otherwise, I wasn't involved in the studio and design as much as, just because we all had lunch we'd be in the lunchroom and I'd be in touch, and I knew all the designers and I knew what was going on in the studio. But, in terms of how it was to work with her, you might, if that's a story that you're trying to tell, you might want to talk to her.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome to talk to you, and this project, it's personally like important to me because actually the dolls have my age. Like, I am from 1994, and it was just like precious to see like the dolls in my hand and be like, oh my God, we born on the same time, like this was made like 27 years ago. And it's really interesting, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with.
Are you from Brazil by any chance?
Yes, I am.
I hear your sourtaque a little bit, just a little bit of
you got my
accent. I have family in Brazil and I speak Portuguese, which is why I recognize.
I mean, we couldn't do it in Portuguese anyway because
No. And my Portuguese is not at that level anyways, but I hear a little bit of an accent, and I know this, like, I know the lilt towards Portuguese.
Oh my God, that's